What up, Guy here. I'm back for Clayclass round 2. First video was a really basic introduction to using the wheel and how to throw a first pot. This second Clayclass ep will be focused just on centering, which is probably the most challenging part for beginners and the part which I would say that you want to spend most of your time getting a really good grasp of before you start doing anything fancy. So I'll talk through a few basic little sort of like pointers / hints, and then we'll go through the process as well. Using some nice soft recycled clay again today. This piece is a lot bigger than the one that I used in the previous video, but you can use whatever size you feel comfortable. Again, if you're a first timer or early stager or beginner, I would use a small piece, probably about the size of a tennis ball, which I think is maybe about like 400, 500 grams. This is maybe close to a kilo. So first step, always start with a nice round ball. You can just whack your piece into a nice rounded shape. I also like to start with something which is a bit more kind of like a potato, like a Kipler potato, which is like a longish potato, as opposed to being like a perfect circle. Just that way it makes your centering a little bit easier, actually. So I'm gonna throw down my piece, try and hit the middle. Most of the time we miss, which is totally fine. Most wheels have these sort of rings on them which you can use to guide you, and you want to get your piece as close to the middle as possible. So always slide it over until it is pretty much right in the center, and then when you think it is right in the center, just also spin your wheels a few times just to make sure that it is. The closer we can get this to the center now, the easier it's going to be once we turn our wheel and we start spinning. So once it's locked in, just go all the way around with your finger and press in the edges of the clay. This is going to lock in the clay so it's not going to pull off the wheel, which is very, very annoying. From here, this is a little, I suppose, tip which I feel like helps a lot and it's not challenging to do. So before you start, just using both hands to whack the clay and just rotate the clay slowly while you're whacking. And what this does is, without any sort of like speed or motion of the wheel, you can already start to create a more centered piece. So you can see as I'm squeezing, as I'm whacking in, this is becoming more like a dome or more like a pyramid shape, which is what we want. So with our centering, we want to be creating a nice strong volcano. So this is heading in the right direction before we've even started the wheel, which makes it a lot easier. So always do this. This really, really helps on big pieces as well, which is sort of where I'm at now. So already at this point, this is a lot more centered than the typical piece would be before people start spinning their wheel, and that's going to make your life a whole lot easier. Highly recommend these 2 steps. It's going to make things, more fun. From here, wheel on, and our pottery stance, again, super duper important. Getting in as close as you can to your wheel. So like literally get yourself right in there, cuddle the wheel. The tighter in you are, the easier it's going to be. And then we're going to slowly start spinning, and we're going to talk about elbow placement. Key element in centering. I don't know many people in the world that could center their clay while their elbows are up here. It's really, really hard. So you want to make sure your elbows are in on your legs. I highly recommend putting them on your legs, better than in on your rib cage, just because you're a little bit sort of like thin here, whereas a little wider with your base will make things a lot easier. So give it a whirl. Once you're comfy, we're going to dip our hands into our water, and we're going to create a cup. So the cup is one hand over the other, and our thumbs are up. So you see from this side, cup, thumbs up, and we're just going to gently place that onto my piece, remembering that our hands are overlocking. You don't want your hands to be like this, you don't want to have a gap on this side, but it's okay to have a gap close to you on this side over here. So just make sure you're nice and comfy. And from here, we're going to slowly start spinning, and starting just to get a bit of a feel for it. So at this point, normally the pieces are a little wobbly, a little sort of off center, but the process of going up and down, which is what I'm about to show you, will get them centered. So to do that, lots of water, hands together, chest over my piece, really strong position. Again, elbows, elbows, elbows. That's gonna make your life so much easier. And then when you're ready, what you're gonna do is you're gonna squeeze predominantly from your left side. Now, this is all dependent also on the way that your wheel is spinning. My wheel spins anti-clockwise. If your wheel spins clockwise, then your right hand is going to be doing more of the work. So left hand for anti-clockwise, right hand for clockwise. It also depends on what, it mainly just depends on what way your wheel spins as opposed to what hand you are left or right. So From here, my left is really going to push against the clay with a focus on the bottom. So this point here of my hand is pushing in as opposed to this initially. So this point here is pushing in towards the clay, and my right hand is just supporting, but my hands are still in that same position. So left is pressing in, left is pressing in, left is pressing in, and you can see that clay has already started to go up. Now, if we look at this piece, our bottom looks nice and centered. It's not wobbling too much side to side. The top is wobbling, which is totally fine because the top we can easily fix. This, real challenge to fix. This, easy to fix. So you want most of your wobble ending up here, and that's why we push from the bottom of our hand to try and push up any wobble from the base up into the top. So I'm gonna go again. Squeeze, lift, all the way off the top, fast wheel, slow hands, gently coming off the top. And we're gonna go again, really focusing in on that base before we lift up. So if your piece at the bottom still feels quite wobbly, you really shouldn't be lifting your hands up. So you should stay at the base here and squeeze in, locking in those elbows until it's not wobbly, and then once it feels nice and steady, then you're gonna start to go up towards the top. All right, so this is my cone. It's a beautiful shape, beautiful size, and from here we're gonna go down, which is the next step. Now, the most important part of going down is to not go straight down. We need to angle the cone slightly, and I'll explain to you what that means. So I'm just going to show you with just one of my hands. So first thing is, left hand is on. Again, left hand is going to be the most important hand for your centering, as long as your wheel is going anti-clockwise. If it's going clockwise, right hand. My left thumb is over the piece. So you can see here, it's over, not pressing in at this point, it's over the piece. And my upper knuckle here is right on the edge. Again, this is where most of the pressure is going to come from, not from here, not from here. So normally you have both hands on, so they'd both be overlocking, same as down the bottom, and thumbs over the top. But for the purpose of the demo, I'm just going to show you with one hand so you guys can see. So my angle here, right, as opposed to pressing from here and going straight down, is going to come from here. So the back of my hand pushing forward, and you can see that my cone actually tilts slightly forward, and it's slowly guiding down. So I'm not forcing the clay down, I'm just allowing it to gently collapse into itself. Again, if it gets a bit dry, take your hand off, add some water, but the pressure's got to be coming from the back of the hand, right? So fast wheel, slow hands, and if you have the correct angle, you can literally do this whole thing with one hand without very much pressure. I'm not straining at this point. And then this final little bit, again, my left hand is locked in, my thumb is coming over the top, and I'm just going to slowly start to press down. So, at this point, this is centered. It's probably not the best shape to start with, but the piece itself isn't moving side to side, it's not wobbling. If I go full speed, you can see very little movement in my hand. This is pretty close to being centered. It's going to take you a little while to get that, so I recommend going up and down as many times as you can. A few of my students here, when I first taught them centering, I got them going up and down 50 times until they get a really good feel for it. So that's a really good one to practice. Don't stress out too much about making an entire piece, because if you can master this, the rest of the making will be so much easier and your pieces will be so much cuter. So I'll show you guys one more time. We're going to go up. So both hands are on, squeezing in through these meaty parts, making sure that I'm really locking in at that base and squeezing until there's no wobble. Again, if we look at this piece here, no wobble, slight wobble here, great, because we can fix this, we can't fix this. And I'm going to guide and lift all the way off the top. Notice my hands are really steady, elbows are staying locked in the whole time, nice and steady as well. I'm not like rushing the process, I'm just feeling through the clay. And again, from the back of the hand, forward and slowly collapsing down. Normally you'd have both hands on, but your left hand is doing most of that work. Now, a little key from here, something that a lot of potters struggle with, is when they get to this point, once their piece starts to belly out and it's almost near the end, we find that our hands roll over the piece. So your hands go from being at the back, which is where they should be, to this point here where the back of your hand here is really on the top. If it's on the top, it's going to make it really challenging to keep your piece centered. So once you get to about this point and you've pressed, really nice to take your hands off, keep spinning, but bring your left hand to the back of the piece, and the same way that you would have centered, lock in the bottom part of your hand here. So from here, spinning fast, both hands are on, I'm supporting at the base with my left, and then I'm just going to press over with my thumbs and collapse down until we have a nice little scone-like shape. Alright, spin full speed, put both hands on, this is nice and centered. If you bring your piece down and it's just slightly centered, so maybe it looks like this, well this is not slightly centered, this is quite uncentered, but the shape is looking pretty good and it's just a little bit wobbly. Something else that you can try is again, just with using your left hand, and we're going to push with our left hand to about 2 o'clock on our wheel. So using my left, pushing towards 2 o'clock, and you'll see this clay is going to slowly start to center up. So I'm pushing that way from the back here, and you can see we end up with a piece which has gone back to being centered, and then we can just flatten out the top the same way. So hands are both on the wheel and flatten out the top. That's a really good one to practice as well while you're getting a feel for it, to actually just gently push the piece off center, and then use your left to push across and really center that up. Make a huge difference. All right, so there are a few tips and tricks. The key sort of takings from that is make sure that your elbows are locked in, utilize your left hand in the going up process and the going down process, and really nice and slow and steady with your hands. Your wheel will need to go faster, as fast as you feel comfortable. I would recommend going full speed. That is all for centering. Let me know how you go, and I'll be back for a hole making vid next for clay class number 3. Thanks for watching, and have a nice dinner, breakfast or lunch, whatever your next meal is. Lots of love.